hit it. Microphone check. Baby, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls,
you are now rocking with the best.
It's not some
Baby. One time.
still shining.
Respect my swag.
It don't mean a thing if it ain't got that swing.
and this is
Another episode.
a swingers.
After dark. What time is it? It's time to get live.
And this is your host. Not some baby.
Let's go, champ.
Microphone check 1 2 1 2. This is your host, Not Some baby, and this is another episode of Swingers After Dark. And I'm with. She shall remain nameless. See, she thought I was gonna say her name, and she had like the hardest time to sit down with me because she's showing off her trophies, and her trophies is she was paddled. She was paddled recently. Recently as last night, and she had a hard time sitting down. It's like after you get your ass beat by your grandma or your mama, you like sitting down, you have like a hardest time sitting down. And now I know why dudes, like when they pledge in a fraternity, they used to like come to class and they could hardly sit down. I'm like, wow, now I see it. Now I see why after you get paddled and flogged, you have a hardest time to sit down because you get flogged and paddled on the buttocks. And that's her trophy. Ladies and gentlemen, the screaming in the background has nothing to do with BDSM. That's like a whole nother party, which has a room full of kids. So I don't want y'all to think that, we're in a BDSM session, somebody's getting their ass beat and somebody's screaming because they in a session. You feel me? So I just want to get that out the way just in case they heard the background noise. But so tell me about these trophies. Why do you call like getting paddled a trophy to the point where you can hardly sit down?
Well, a trophy is not basically regarding paddling. A trophy is basically what the hereafter is from impact play or any other type of play in BDSM. So if it's a heavy play, a trophy is basically a bruise or a mark.
And what is impact play in BDSM?
Impact play is going to be play with floggers, you have canes, you have paddles, you have belts, hands. So that's what impacted play is for me.
See, I couldn't do the belts because I have PTSD and I be having flashbacks of my grandma beating my ass on the ironing cord and extensions and all that shit. So I just stick with the simple shit like flogging. And, the fire play and stuff like that. So it's like, how do you gain a tolerance, like a pain tolerance to take, the paddling and the flogging?
Well, generally, if you have a top or a dominant who you have built a rapport or you're in a dynamic or you're exploring, you negotiate your sessions and your scenes with that person. And generally, a top or a dominant will start off with you very lightly. They'll use their implements and it's a lighter opportunity for them to show you what a kink or fetish is. And if you're continuing to want to grow in that particular kink or fetish, they will become heavier. Like when I first started getting flogged, it was just a light flog and then it became heavier and heavier as we progressed. So.
And what is the top and what is the bottom?
The top is the person who is providing they're the sadist, basically, or they could be a sadomasochist, technically. But that is the person who will be providing you the service or performing the scene or session. And the bottom is the person who is experiencing the scene.
So did you already know when you got into BDSM that you were a top or a bottom?
No, I did not.
So how did you determine your lane that you decide to stay on?
I am technically a switch. But I am a switch lane and submissive, so I do prefer to bottom. I only top mostly in a private setting. You just kind of have to have an open mind and be willing to explore things safely and consensually. So I figured out the things that I like through certain experiences, and some things I enjoy more than others. But I'm always open to certain scenes and sessions.
And what is a switch?
A switch is a person who tops and bottoms.
Also, when do you cut it on and cut it off? Like, it's like a light switch, turn it off and turn it on. Like, how do you know which role you have to play? Or which mentality that you got to go into so you could, be control of the situation?
Well, I'm primarily a bottom when I travel. So therefore, I'm in that bottom space. When I am topping, that would have been a conversation and vetting and negotiating with another person who requested that I top them. So.
And you're a traveling sub, correct?
That is correct.
So what is a traveling sub? Is it like a submarine sandwich, a subway, the subway train, or, the submarine under the water? What is a traveling sub?
A traveling service submissive is a submissive who travels and provides service, which could be in their state or out of their state, to a top or a dominant. That service could be a show bottom. That service could be assisting them with setting up implements at an event or for a private scene that they have or an event that they have going on. So ultimately, when you travel, what your priorities or your duties are going to be determined by the person who you are assisting or you're giving the service to. So that's negotiated between you and that other party. So I may travel with one party and I am a show bottom, but I may travel with another party and I'm just there to provide assistance.
So when did you decide that you wanted to become a traveling sub instead of being stationary?
It wasn't actually a decision. There were just opportunities that were presented to me that I was very open to and have taken this journey since.
In other words, she got money. Let me hold something, because a lot of people can't travel. You feel me? A lot of people can't travel. So if you like doing your thing on the low, like if you on your BMF shit, just let me know, all right? Because I want to get a few dollars outside of podcasting and writing books. So when did you get into BDSM?
It was about 2 years ago, 2.5, almost 3 years now.
Oh, she's a baby. That's what's up. So what was your introduction? Who busted your cherry?
A friend of mine I met through a vanilla group. And we started talking and sharing some things, and come to find out he was a rigger and he tops. And so I started out as a rope bunny.
And what is vanilla in regards to you referring to a social media group as vanilla?
Vanilla would be basically when we say vanilla, we're talking about people who either aren't aware or aren't really educated about or do not really participate per se in kink. So. And
what is a rigger?
A rigger is a person who binds you in rope.
So when you first got into BDSM, which kink? Wait, did you already have a kink or fetish before you got into BDSM? Or did BDSM bring out the monster that was laying dormant inside? I
would say that BDSM did open some doors for me that had been dormant for quite some time. And once that door was open, it couldn't be closed anymore.
See, ladies and gentlemen, especially you fellas, I always tell you that, it takes one special man to bring a freak out of a woman. You feel me? And this just confirms my theory that it takes a person or a situation to bring something out of somebody that they didn't even know existed. So how did you know which kink was your speed? Because when I did the fire play, I was nervous. Like I don't like fire next to my skin. No. I do not like knife, but I did the knife and it felt good. And I did the fire play and that felt good. I was the participant. I got to do it again. So what did you know which one was your speed? Which type of kink rather?
You have to have an open mind. You have to know what your soft limits are, meaning things that you've never tried before, that you're open to try, and then you have to know what your hard limits are, meaning things that repulse you or that trigger you or that you're just completely not interested in exploring. And so I didn't have a specific knowledge of what I liked or didn't like. I had an open mind, and I was willing to try new things to determine whether I liked it or not. I mean, that was the only way I was able to say, okay, I really enjoy flogging versus I do like a paddle, but I would prefer floggers over paddles. You understand?
So, how you ever been into a subspace? And if so, describe a subspace and how somebody could get into a subspace. Because I just learned that word.
You cannot really. Subspace is different for every person, but I think most S-types or submissives or bottoms will agree that it's a space where you're just in a different zone. You feel free. You're kind of just. It's almost like a euphoria or a high, you know. And the way you get into it, I mean, it depends. There have been times I've been topped and I didn't really get into a subspace moment. But then there are other times that, certain things that were being done by that top, maybe the ambiance, maybe the music, maybe their rhythm or things they were saying during the scene as well. So for each person, subspace itself is different. And you don't always experience subspace just because somebody is topping you.
So a subspace pretty much feels like you're floating.
Yes.
Listen, ladies and gentlemen, I got 2 rules. When I'm at a swinger LS party, I will not fuck a woman while she's under the influence, intoxicated, and under the influence. I also will never fuck a woman when she's under the subspace because they look like they don't even know where the fuck they at. So I'm like, you know, I don't want to put myself in a fucking Me Too movement because we fucking. She knows I'm talking to her, and then she wakes up and she don't even know how she got there. So, like I said, I would never fuck with a woman when she's in the subspace and she's under the influence and when she's intoxicated. So I don't want them problems. I want you 100% coherent. I want you to decompress because I've seen instances where women, you know, after a flogging session or a paddle session, they're curled up in a corner, you know, putting themselves together, and then they come back to life, and it's like 2 different people, you know. So how do you cope with a subspace, or, you know, after a session, you need a moment alone? Like, I've seen women curled up, they look like they're about to cry. You feel me? So how do you bring yourself together?
Each person's aftercare is what it is.
Yes, aftercare. So how's your aftercare?
For me, I prefer, generally for my aftercare, I actually prefer touch. I do not always negotiate that when other people are topping me. Only specific dominants or tops can do aftercare for me, but in other instances, I will offer aftercare to other S-types, or I just kind of go into my little space and, you know, just reminisce on the moment and come down. So, I mean, aftercare is different for every person as well. So some people, they may need to be hugged or touched. Some people may need to go into a corner and ball up and just enjoy and relic in that moment, or cry and let it out, or express whatever emotion they're feeling. But it's contingent on that person, what they prefer for aftercare and whether they've negotiated with the dominant or top that they want them to perform the aftercare. So
what traits of a dominant, of a dom, that you can, you know, that you look for to consider becoming a traveling submissive for? Like, what are certain things that you see in somebody, in a dominant, that would make you say, I want to fuck with that person? You know what I'm saying? I know, is it trust? Is it honesty? It's like, what certain characteristics that you look for? Because a lot of subs, they don't want to get into a session with a particular dom because they think that the dom is too rough, or they think the dom is too aggressive. So what do you look for in a dominant that would make you feel like you're safe under their care?
It's hard for me to really answer that in a direct way, because I have, over the time frame that I started my journey, built different relationships with certain dominants and tops. So these are people, for one, that I've known, that I vetted, that I trust, who know, they also trust me. I mean, this is not a situation in which whatever I'm doing for that dominant is shared with others. So, and it has to be like a flow. I mean, I'm not just going to have some random D-type or top reach out to me and say, okay, can you provide service since you travel? I'm going to have to vet that person. I will also seek out mentorship from people who I trust about that person, just to make sure I'm putting myself in a safe environment. And I don't always take an offer that comes my way. That's just me.
No, the reason why I say that because it seems like every time I go to a function, it's a new dom. It's like it's people I knew in the swinger world. All of a sudden, they walking around with paddles and floggers and shit like that. I'm like, yo, when did this happen? So that's why I ask, because you don't know. I don't want to say who's real and who's fake. I don't want to use those words.
Right.
But it's more or less who's serious and who's just doing this because it's the end thing to do because of the fucking 50 Shades phenomenon that everybody and their mama want to be in BDSM. I don't want to be into BDSM because I know my role and I just want to smash. So I stay on the swinger side. You feel me? I'm not going to front. I probably use flogging for something else. But so how do you determine what dom is serious and who's not?
You have to use wisdom with anything, whether you're dealing with people in the BDSM world, in your professional world, at your job, at home. You have to use wisdom, trust your gut, seek guidance from others, ask questions. I mean, you can't know without asking questions. And if it don't feel right, if it's quacking like a duck, it's probably a duck. But I really don't yuck anybody's yum. If a person identifies as a dominant or a submissive, that's their decision. But once again, I'm not their submissive. I'm not their particular bottom. So I'm not obligated to perform a service for them at any given point. So it just depends on what my vibe is with that particular person, and just kind of negotiating and vetting them and asking questions about what type of service they're asking for, and go from there.
And what is your vetting process? It's like, how do you fill somebody out to let you know that you'll be safe under their care if you decide to be under their consideration to become their sub? They're submissive.
I'm not looking to become anybody submissive at this time, so that's...
Okay. So what's the difference between a submissive and a traveling submissive?
I'm not... as far as being a traveling submissive, you don't have to be owned. There are dominants who loan their submissives out, who are owned. And then you can be an unowned submissive and travel and provide a service. The other thing is you want to make sure that you have a service resume. If a dominant is coming to you, just like you want to check their background or see what they're about, I'm sure they're going to be wanting to know, what is your skill set? What type of services do you offer? So
how can a sub be unowned? And how could a sub become owned? And do you see yourself becoming owned? Wait. Let's reel it back, because a lot of people are still vanilla. What does owned mean in BDSM lingo?
Okay, so being owned or unowned, that just means that you're in some type of consensual and contractual agreement with another person for some type of power exchange, whether it's a total power exchange, meaning you're giving this person power over your livelihood and how you conduct your day-to-day. Or it could be a power exchange in which certain elements of your life in your day-to-day, or maybe just for sessions and scenes. So being owned or unowned is based upon whether you decide that you're going to go into some type of contractual agreement with another person for an exchange of power.
So that's new to me, because I'm thinking that when you're a sub, you're automatically owned. So it's like, how do dominants feel about, I want to say frolic. I don't want to say dealing. Like, how do they, what word I'm using? I got to tap into my journalism and my English degree. You know what I'm saying? What word should I use? Or, engaging with. Yeah. So isn't like kind of a slippery slope to engage with a dominant as an unowned sub, because people may get the impression that you are owned?
The question you're asking about how the dominants feel, I would say a dominant would need to answer that. Every dominant is not in my inbox or coming at me via email or any other means of communication. So for a dominant who's seeking service, they do not have a submissive, or maybe the submissive they do have may not have that particular skill set. if they reach out to me, I will discuss that with them. But how do they feel about it? I can't answer.
Okay, so this is a question that I'm sure that you can answer. When another dominant approach you, and they want to have a conversation with you, what would you tell them? Because I remember I was in the inbox of a chick who was owned, and she was like, are you a D type? And I said, yes, I'm the dominant type in my world. And she was like, well, you got to speak to my dominant to see if we got this conversation. Mm-hmm. It's like, since you're unowned, but you're a traveling sub, do you have those same rules and etiquette?
Right. So I am under a particular house, which I will not disclose. But prior to that point, if a dominant did come in my inbox, most dominants who've been around for quite some time, they will generally ask you straight from the gate, are you owned or unowned, and they'll ask you particular questions. And most submissives who are educated, and even if they aren't, generally a 101 is that if a dominant is in your inbox, you should be identifying as owned or unowned, so that dominant or that top then knows how to proceed. And then there are some dynamics in which the top or dominant allow their submissive to speak to others. So every dynamic is different, and how they handle communication with other people outside of their dynamic is up to that dominant or that master or that top.
So do you see any jealousy in the BDSM world, envy as far as dominance, trying to compete over submissive, slaves, brats, etc.?
I have no idea. I stay in my lane, so.
That's what's up. That's what's up. You're not in the mix. You're not in the bullshit. You're not with the fuckery. Me personally, I'm not with the bullshit either. So I stay in my lane because I just came to fuck. You know what I'm saying? I just came to have a good time, network, do my podcast, write my books. I got no time for the fuck shit. So as a sub, how do you avoid the nonsense? How do you avoid the nonsense?
Generally, I just treat everybody with respect. I stay to myself.
Because you are quiet. You do move to your own beat, and you are quiet. So even though you're in the mix, you're not really in the mix. So how do you keep your form of mystery, your mystique?
Discretion is key. Modesty. Just being mindful of your conduct. Conduct will make or break you in certain instances. Everybody's always watching. People are watching you even when you think they're not watching. So you just have to be mindful of how you carry yourself in public and private, on social media. You are a walking representation of not only yourself, but your house. If you're representing a house, or you're dominant, or you're top. So being mindful of how you carry yourself is very important.
And give one more again. Give the people the functions and responsibilities of a traveling submissive. And what's the difference between a submissive that's under consideration and a submissive who's not? So talk about the functions of a traveling submissive and the difference between a submissive who's under consideration and just a submissive who's a freelancer. Do you consider yourself a freelancer, right?
You have multiple types of submissives. I do believe there are traveling professional submissives out there. And you can discuss with them kind of how they do their professional walk. For me, I travel and I work with specific dominants. I'm open to other relationships, but as far as the responsibilities, like I said in the beginning, they vary depending on the service that is requested from you. So your traveling responsibilities will not always be the same, but you should be at any given point communicating with that dominant and that top, asking as many questions as possible. What are the specifics of the service they're needing? What is the time frame? What is the date for service? How those travel arrangements are going to be made? Are you charging a fee? How that fee will be paid? Contractually, what will be done or not done? What are you consenting to be done with you? What are you consenting to do or not do, and as far as services is concerned? So you also want to ensure that you're following up, and then following up after service is provided. Were there any opportunities for growth based on the service you provided? So the dominant can give you feedback, because you don't want to be in a situation where service was stellar, and it's like, okay, that particular dominant was pleased, and then you have, or top, and then you have another scenario where the dominant wasn't so pleased. There were opportunities for you to learn something or grow, and you didn't take advantage of it. So my goal is to always ask questions. I ask a lot of questions.
So do you see yourself as going as a switch? Do you see yourself having a house of your own?
No, I do not. I'm not interested.
So why not?
No, it's just not. I know my lane. I know my place.
But if you're a switch, doesn't that mean that you go back and forth between being a dominant and being a submissive?
No. What I was saying in the beginning is I am a switch leaning submissive, which means I enjoy being a bottom and I enjoy being a submissive, but I do have instances in which I top others. Do I want to go into a full role capacity of topping or owning? I'm not interested.
So you wouldn't own me?
No.
Wow. So I wouldn't be in the house of such and such. Such and such.
You can be in whoever's house of such and such. It won't be mine. I'm not looking.
Damn.
I'm not going there.
You see, I just got rejected on my own podcast. That's fucked up. That's a first. That's a first. I wanted to be her submissive. And she's like, nah. She gave me the Kembe Mutombo finger wave. No can do. So when you say you're a top, that's just meaning a session.
For a session, a private.
For a session. That doesn't mean everyday life. That
Exactly. This is not my everyday thing. It's not something I seek out. There are opportunities that are presented to me, and if properly negotiated and discussed with that person, some of them I take advantage of, and others I don't.
So how do you separate your BDSM life from your quote-unquote real life? Like, how do you bounce back and forth from the matrix, and you have this healthy balance instead of, your BDSM overcoming what's everything about you? Because I'm a firm believer that the lifestyle to me is a part of me, but it's not me in my totality. So how do you balance out your life?
I get up and I go to work and make my 9 to 5, and from 5 to 9, I'm doing whatever I choose.
Because the reason why I ask that, because you have subs, they got to text they dominance every day. You know what I'm saying? They got to text, they got to, they got certain things that they have to do every damn day. Well, those are slaves. Those not doms. Speaking of which, how did you figure out whether you were a slave, a brat, a sub, whatever the case may be? Like, how did you determine certain personality traits that will fit you to serve a dominant?
Reading is fundamental. Read, research, ask questions, talk to others who have been in this lifestyle. That's the only way you're going to be able to learn on this journey what you identify as. I mean, I didn't come in saying I'm a brat, and I didn't. The other thing is being mindful of people identifying you before you are saying that that's your identity. You don't just, oh yeah, you're a slut. What? Did you, are you agreeing to be this slut? Is that what you really think you are, or is that not? Whether it's, your choice or not. So you have to read, you have to research. And that's the most crucial part. And you have to ask questions. You can't just...
So when you're a traveling sub, are you a traveling sub for multiple dominants?
I have provided service to multiple dominants, yes.
So how do you work that out without bringing forth confusion and competition, or people feeling away and they're in their feelings because you're a sub for somebody else?
Communication.
So how do you bring everybody together, or do you talk to everybody one-on-one? You tell them this is what it is, or do you have like a meeting of the minds? Like, because in the swing lifestyle, let's just say if I'm in a couple and a dude want to play with my chick, and I'm like, yo, I want to meet your wife. So we could have a discussion, so we could talk about it, so we could get to know each other. Or if a dude want to play with my main squeeze may tell him, yo, talk to my man to get permission or to see if he's cool with you playing with me. So is it the same thing in the BDSM world? Especially being a traveling sub.
Discretion is key. So no, I'm not consulting with several other people about one particular dominant asking me for service. So I'm speaking with that particular dominant. Now, being under a particular house, I am going to speak with that head of household as well. In my specific instance, I'm able to provide service to other dominants. But if I go to that head of house and discuss service per se, let's just say
The house of not son.
that part wants me to provide service, and I speak with the head of household, and that head of household says, let's further discuss. Well, we may either both discuss it with that particular person, or I'll be given consent to just proceed on my own.
So do you need consent with the dominant that you becoming a traveling sub for, even though you're unowned? Or you could just do anything that you want to do? I'm asking because a lot of dominants, they may feel away. Like, we still dealing with emotions at the end of the day, with titles or without titles. So how would you avoid that confusion, or the person that you're doing traveling submissive work for, that they don't get in the emotions because you becoming a traveling sub for somebody else?
I don't have problems with the dominants. The dominants I deal with are very mature, very educated, very respectful and respected. So therefore, I don't have drama or jealousy. We don't have those problems over here. And I do have my own autonomy because of other things that I do. So I respect the people that I work with, and I respect the people that I provide the service with and for. Therefore, these are conversations I have privately with those people. That's the most I'll say about that.
So everything is about having decorum, you know what I'm saying? Because it's like, you know, every BDSM, whether it's the swinging lifestyle or the BDSM lifestyle, it seems like everything is out in the open nowadays, you know? So how do you keep your discretion and your decorum when everything is out in the open, everything is televised nowadays in social media? Well, how do you keep that sense of autonomy?
By minding my business and dealing with that person privately, and if our scene is public or private, so be it, if we agree to do that. But that will be shared by that particular top or dominant, not me.
So if you're on and you're a traveling sub, you'll consult with your house or with your dominant, see if it's okay to become a traveling sub for another dominant, correct?
Well, I'm not sure. Like I said, everybody's dynamic is different. So whether or not other traveling submissives are owned, or whether they're not owned, or they're doing their own thing, that's up to them and the people that they deal with. Me specifically, at this current time, I have the ability to negotiate with other dominants without there being a problem. So I do things respectfully. I do things with discretion, and I'm just very mindful.
And when you say negotiate, what do you mean by negotiating when it comes to engaging with other dominants?
That's where you're having a conversation with that person about things that you're interested in allowing them to explore with you, and whether or not you're consenting to do XYZ thing. For example, fire play. I may be completely deathly afraid of fire, and this dominant or top wants to play with fire. Well, I may say no. That's something I just do not want to try at this time. So they know that, okay, take fire off the table. And then they may bring up another tool or implement, which floggers, yes, canes, yeah, we may do that. You know, so that's what negotiating is. Discussing how is this scene going to go? Is it a consensual, non-consensual? Are we going to do and act things out, or are we just going to vibe and flow and go, you know, from one toy to another? So it's a thorough discussion between you and that person up to and leading to the point of the scene or session.
What tips would you give a traveling submissive and unowned, whether they're owned or unowned?
Make sure that you get yourself some type of checklist. Create a checklist for the dominant. Once again, make sure that you're asking the who, what, where, when, and whys. So that way you are making sure that dominant is prepared. I like to do things like forecast. If I know that we're traveling to XYZ city, I try to ask the dominant, especially if they're not traveling with their own submissive, where do they like to eat? Be mindful of this is what the forecast is for the weather. Here are some local areas that you may want to see if you want to sightsee. So when you are looking to do traveling service, one, get yourself your resume together for your skill set. What type of skills are you offering? Do you have any prior experience? What are your hard and soft limits? What have you tried thus far? And that you have some type of questionnaire of what specifically you want to know about the dominant. What is it that they're requesting? And if it's going to be travel outside of your state of residence, what will that include, or what is going to be requested? So those are some of the tips I would say are very important.
And on that note, this has been another episode of Swingers After Dark. And this is your host, Not Son, baby. Check out my website at www.notsunblaze.com. That's www.nahsunblaze.com. And check out my ebook, Fuck. Yes, you heard right. Fuck, F-U-C-K. It's on Nook, Kindle, iBooks, Google Play. Go get it. It'll make you say, ow. And shoot me an email at swingpodcast@gmail.com. That's swingpodcast@gmail.com. Hit me up with any questions or concerns that you may have. Rate, share, subscribe, and comment on this podcast. Dig. And on that note, until next time, peace. You know.